lived in a city in central Ohio that begins with a C and has a big college that I live near. I attended a different college than the one I mentioned and made a 20-minute drive from the city to that college. I also worked nights as a pizza delivery man in the city and the surrounding suburbs. One night I had an order from the town where my college is located, which is a smaller suburban city northwest of my home city. And this call occurred during what my coworkers and I refer to as the dead hour, which is just before the shop closed at 1 in the morning. I begrudgingly took the pizzas, got in the car, and plugged the address into the GPS. I noticed that the house was located off a back road in what looked like a sparsely populated area. Not thinking much of this, I drove up Route 315 to I-270 East and exited. After passing through downtown, the cemetery, and my college, I drove through some subdevelopments and then onto a smaller road where the house was located. The GPS notified me that I had arrived at my destination, but to my surprise the house was boarded up. I noticed that there was a small shed around the left side of the house that had a small window. There was a flickering light in the window. At this point, almost every red flag had gone off in my head, but I knew my hard-ass boss would be pissed if I went down on this delivery, so I proceeded towards the shed. As I got closer to the shed, I heard a rustling in the bushes next to the path I was walking to the shed. Then I heard a man whisper, "Here they come, 45, 45. At that point, a man jumped out of the bushes and 2 other men jumped out of the shed. They were carrying knives and were wearing these long robes and white masks. I sprinted back to the car and made it just in time while one of the assailants managed to slip my arm. As I reversed out, I could see the assailants now standing in the middle of the road looking pissed. I probably drove 90 miles per hour on the way back. When I got back to the shop, everyone looked shocked. After explaining everything to them, we contacted the police and they dispatched a few officers to the house. When they got there, the assailants were gone. They found some drug paraphernalia in the shed and some ropes and some weird torture equipment. I work at a pizza joint in Chicago, and I unfortunately have the shitty responsibility of delivering pizzas, usually on the weekends and usually at night. I've asked my boss for day shifts, but she seems to ignore my requests and give me whatever shifts I don't want the most. I know being a pizza delivery man is somewhat of a dangerous job, but I never imagined anything like what happened to me a few months ago could actually happen. There's this one customer that always calls in and acts strange as hell on the phone. Sometimes he'll just hang up on you, sometimes he'll order pizza normal, but make crazy sounds while doing so and then hang up. We've always thought this guy was just an idiot playing pranks. He would make really weird comments too, like, "I want to order a large pizza with pineapples, mustard, and your skin." I'll never forget that one. We usually just hang up on his ass, and we always know it's him calling because his number is saved in our system. So we called again a few months ago and ordered a pizza normally. No bullshit, no weird remarks or sounds, and actually gave his address too. I thought it would be interesting to finally deliver to this guy, and when I drove up to his house, it was like something out of a horror movie. An old as hell looking place right on the line where we don't deliver. Not in the busy part of the city where most of our orders come in either. It looked like something out of an urban exploration video, and there were no lights on I could make out. I wasn't really scared or anything, just interested in seeing what he looked like. When I went to the front door, I rang the bell, but it was broken, so I knocked. I realized I forgot the guy's soda and thought he'd give me shit for sure, or just freak out on me. Nobody answered right away, so I knocked again and he opened the door a crack. I could only see half his face because he barely opened the door and it was dark inside. He had long bangs and was wearing this mask around his mouth. His eyes were open wide and I told him how much the pizza was and that I was sorry I forgot the drink. He looked down at the pizza and said it's okay, then looked back up at me. We stared at each other for like another 5 seconds in silence until I got bored of his shit and repeated the amount. He said okay, then asked me if anyone's ever attacked me. Admittedly, I was caught off guard, but I said no, and if they did, they'd be sorry. He then pulled down this mask that was covering his mouth, and he had big-ass scars all around his mouth. I have no idea, nor can even imagine what they might have been from, but he looked seriously messed up. He smiled at me and his lips were all cracked. I noticed he wasn't about to hand me any money, so I told him I was leaving. I turned around and started walking down the steps, and he screamed at me and slammed the door. This bastard was crazy, and I don't think any of his shit was to be funny. That final scream he gave me sounded insane as hell, even though I kind of expected him to do something like that. He has called several times since then, and we always just tell him now that he is on our no delivery list. He usually just screams and hangs up or cusses out whoever is on the phone. I worked as a pizza deliverer for a local pizza place in my town when I was 17 or 18. The popular demographic was people in poorer households, so a lot of my deliveries consisted of traveling to the grittier parts of town. On one such delivery, I was headed to an apartment complex. It was incredibly run down with trash and spray paint on the sides. Upon buzzing in, I'm greeted by a pungent cigarette smell throughout the entire building. The delivery is on the 3rd floor, and I take the elevator up because I didn't want to disturb the pizzas. The door for the apartment the customer was in was cracked slightly open, as most are. Customers are usually eager to see me walking down the hall and get the payment over with quickly. I lightly tap on the door to knock, and it swings open, and I'm greeted by an older man. Nothing seemed too strange about him. He was wearing a palm tree shirt with cargo shorts and looked fairly normal. The apartment, on the other hand, was fairly messy. The kitchen was a mess, and there were random magazines skewed about, with a CRT TV laying on the living room carpet in front of a single lawn chair and an ashtray. He greeted me in, which is where I should have thought a little more ahead. Normally, there really isn't a reason to go inside a customer's home unless it's a big order or cold outside. Neither of those were the case. I walked into the apartment and then into the kitchen, which was a bad idea. The kitchen was a dead end. It was narrow and difficult to walk past someone. It had 2 long countertops, with one attached to the wall and one parallel to it 2 to 3 feet apart, and cupboards above it to create basically 2 long walls. I set the pizza on the counter and turned around to find the man creepily close to me. He had his arms over each of the counters, basically closing me in and staring at me. I handed him the debit machine, and he paid very slowly while watching me with the creepy glare. He handed it back to me and promptly placed his arms back on the counters. I said thank you and motioned that I wanted to get past him to leave. He didn't move. "Why don't you have a slice with me, young man?" I quickly ushered, "No thank you, I have to get going now," and he still didn't move. I was getting extremely uncomfortable at this point, so I just started shoving my body into one of his arms that was blocking the way, and he was clearly resisting. I pushed harder, managing to get past him, and hurried towards the door. As I was making my way to leave, another door in the man's apartment swung open with a lot of force. I saw it out of the corner of my eye and started to walk faster out of the apartment. I heard stomping after me as the door was closing. That's when I decided to book it down the hallway and practically jump down the flights of stairs. I didn't trust the elevator to move me quick enough. I ran to my car and peeled away as fast as I could.